This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 472.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. Hello, everybody. This is Adam Silver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. There are no WordCamps next weekend. Sad but true, and life goes on. Okay, moving on. Segment 1 in the news. Only one thing I think to talk about here. Yeah, just the one thing. WordPress 6.2 release candidate 1 has been released. It's ready for testing. So please go and there's a link in the show notes how you can help, how you can test, and that is definitely a valuable contribution to the project if you can help test the release candidate as well. Like I said, that's it in the news. Moving on to segment 2, the meat and potatoes of this week's episode, entitled In Search of a Job. So if you haven't already heard, layoffs are happening in the tech sector, and it's happened on and off for the past 30 years that I've been in the space. But it hasn't been so crazy over the past 10 years that I've been in the WordPress space specifically. People come and go, things change, sure. But sadly, it's changed more frequently lately. Consolidations, acquisitions, the hosting companies, GoDaddy and Pantheon had layoffs recently. Envato, Elementor also had some layoffs recently. And some companies who hire contractors, so I've heard, those contracts aren't getting renewed. So, for the record, I want to mention that I did an episode in the same general theme here back in January 2021, episode 358. Where I referenced the do's and don'ts for cover letters and resumes, if you were then looking for work back then. And this week, I'm going to focus on looking inward as this, things change here. What's going on with you if you're in a position that you are in need of a new job or contemplating a switch. So let's start with optimism. Now, seriously, it sounds easy to say I'm optimistic, but not if you're stressed out. But just bear with me here, go along with the ride. You should take a moment to make sure that you get what your wants and your needs are on this new adventure. You have to look at it this way. If you're in a position that you're looking for a job because of no fault of your own, you've been laid off, you want to make sure that this round you get what you want and you need. Okay. So some questions to ask yourself. I would recommend, what's important to you? Work culture, size of team, size of company. Are you looking for a startup versus an established company? All of that matters. You may not think so initially, but it really does, as does the location of the job. The pandemic showed us this. Do you need remote? Are you better on your own, not having to commute? Are you better in person? What really drives you and what's going to set you up for success is important from the get-go. Let's not forget that you want to make sure you are successful in your next opportunity. Now, moving on, another question to ponder on the inward side of things, is it time for an upgrade of yourself? I mean, in this case, it's like a new title, a senior role. Maybe you want to lead a team. Okay. Now, from that perspective, it leads into what kind of projects do you want to lead? If you're in technology, what stack is that company or what stack do you want to use or learn to use, moving forward? If it's a big company, are they more in a maintenance mode or making smaller incremental changes to an existing product or service? Or back if it's a startup, they're making huge things, leaps and bounds because it's such a new product and new service. So, it really comes down to what drives you, what's your passion. And it also comes down to the fact that, you want to think of not have a negative effect of when you wake up on a Monday morning, you want to make sure you're excited to go wherever it is, downstairs your home office or drive in somewhere. You don't want to wake up, and have a,
Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
That's right. Yeah, a case of the Mondays, that's for sure. Okay, I had to do it. I just had to. So you want to be energized. Okay, so now let's say you've answered those questions and you've evaluated the process of looking at companies. Now, let's not forget that you want to evaluate them as well. So, you've answered your questions internally. Now it's time to move on to the companies that you might want to work for. Okay. Now, some resources and ideas here would be checking websites like Glassdoor, read the reviews, see what the salary ranges might be. Check into your own peer communities on Slack, on Discord. You can ask questions there, get the sentiment of a certain company. Also, an idea here that people may not want to think about doing, reach out to someone who might have been working at that company who has left. They may be in a better place to share really what the environment was like and why did they leave. They might have more insights instead of saying, an employee who still might be working there. So you take that information and, see if it works for you, see if there's any red flags. Okay. So now you know what you want to do internally for yourself, the situation. You found companies that seem to fit the bill, and you have some interviews lined up. So it's time to prepare for when they ask you, do you have questions for us? And of course, you should always have questions for them. That's what Owen told me years and years ago when I used to work at other companies. So a few suggestions here would be, do they do the coding challenge if you're in tech? Do they give you a trial? Is it paid? Do they do an assessment test? Those kind of basic questions. Another good question is there a process for supporting ongoing education? Attending conferences, ongoing learning. It's a big deal for people in our space. We want to make sure we stay up to date and that they are going to help fund that as well. Another question I think is important here is, what does the onboarding look like? Do they even have a plan for onboarding? Is it a 30, 60, 90-day review? Now, I've seen a few friends start and end jobs in the past few years really quickly due to the lack of any of that being implemented. They just had no way of knowing how things were going, and to no fault of their own, they were found with no job again after a very short amount of time. An obvious question, next one would be, what's the timeline in hiring? Weeks, months, days? This could also vary based on the size of the company. Big company might take a lot longer because they already have the infrastructure and the resources to keep the projects going. Small company, very nimble, agile, might want someone to start right now. Okay. I recall applying for a company for a job about 15 years ago, only to take a different role. Because I never heard back from them. 18 months later, literally 18 months later, I got an email indicating that they picked somebody else. So, I actually forgot I even applied at that job. So anyway, keep in mind that the best time to apply for a job is when you really don't need one. It's a lot less pressure. And, I share that because you can get offers from recruiters. You can take the interview to see what the opportunity is, and then, kind of go from there, see if it's a right move for you. All right, lastly, compensation. What do we do about this? So let's say it's all worked out. You have an offer on the table. You want to get clarity on a few things. I suggest two main things here. Ask them, first and foremost, can they send over the entire package, not just the salary? You want to know everything. Healthcare, days off, 401k match, the whole thing. It helps you evaluate what the package is. And if you happen to be, looking at multiple companies, it helps you compare apples to apples. Second thing I think is important here, what I've also found online, is when do they need an answer by? Like specifically a date and time is helpful because you might be interviewing at multiple places right now. It gives you more time. It might be able to use them, kind of go back and forth to know who's most interested in you, as far as playing that salary game as well. And if you wait a little bit longer, a lot of companies, it doesn't happen much anymore, but I know companies still do this. If you wait, kind of play hard to get in one aspect, in theory, they might make you a better offer before you even ask for anything in return. So, in speaking to some friends at larger companies, they all suggested take some time, talk to people, get some consults in there, talk about the pros and cons, look at your partner, your spouse, and make sure you're coming to the decision from one that works for your left brain and your right brain. Well, all right, there you have it. That's 2023 version of looking in search of a job because of no fault of your own. And maybe you have a comfortable job, you're good at what you're doing, but you know what? In some industries, in certain situations, having a job is the time to look for a job because you're not desperate. And if something comes along that might match better, maybe it is less hours, less commute, more vacation, more money, less responsibility. You never know. It's something to kind of take into consideration any time of year, any time of economy and crisis, whatever it may be. So there you go. All right, moving on. Segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip, it's a tool. It's called Joplin App. It's over at joplinapp.org. It is a free open source note-taking and to-do application with syncing capabilities. It's like I said, it's free. I did look though. So it has Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, and iOS, and nonprofit open source. And reading the notes here, it looks like there is a paid update or upgrade for the syncing aspect of it. It's pretty inexpensive, I think. I think it's I don't remember where it was. Anyway, it's called Joplin Cloud. Yeah, so let me click on that real quick for you here live. See how much does it cost. It looks like it is 17 euros a year on the basic level. And Pro is 57 euros. And yeah, that's it. And they also have Teams as well. You can pay yearly or pay monthly. So yeah, monthly would be €2 a month or €6 a month. Anyway, check it out. It's over at joplinapp.com, JOPLIN app.org, excuse me, not .com, .org. So there you go. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email, adam@kitchensinkwp.com, or use that speak pipe link from the website. If you want to support the show, you can become a Patreon, kitchensinkwp.com/Patreon. You can sponsor the show. There's a form on the website. That'd be awesome. We'd love to have you. And with that, thanks for listening. Go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. See you next week. All right, bye-bye.